Minnesota Vikings offseason was one of the greatest offseasons that I can remember being a Vikings fan. They went ham hard in the paint in free agency, and they had, honestly, one of the best drafts that I've ever seen. Spielman just perfectly manipulating the board, getting a little bit lucky too, but we will certainly take it. And for my money, of course, a little bit biased, it was the best offseason in the National Football League. CBS Sports analyst Cody Benjamin decided, no, sixth. Now, and we wanted to pick through, so did a top 10 list of NFL off seasons. I feel like the Titans are low, man. Even though they lost Corey Davis, whatever. They traded for Julio Jones. Come on, playa. But ahead of the Vikings at 6, you got the Browns at 1, which we'll get into it. Buccaneers, Chargers, Chiefs, and the Washington football team. So let's dive in. Let's dive in and see what actually went on here. So the Browns, I don't know why the Browns are 1. I would put I would put the Chiefs at 1. I would put the Chargers at 1. I certainly put the Vikings at 1. But, the Browns, does this all hinge on because they signed Clowney? Jadeveon Clowney is the Dippin' Dots of the National Football League. It's he's the D-end of the future and just never really panning out. There's a reason why he moves from team to team. It's whatever. So, is that the big crux? Sure. They cut Sheldon Richardson. They signed Johnny Johnson, big-time safety deal. I think he's extremely underrated, yes. And they drafted Greg Newsome, and they got Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the second round, who I think is a huge steal. Anthony Schwartz, the big-time speedy wide receiver, sure. But, it's a fine off-season. This does not scream number 1. I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I would even put the Bucs at 1. And the Bucs, all they did was re-sign everyone. They brought every single starter back from their Super Bowl championship team, sure. And they signed Gio Bernard. Every single fantasy football season, it gets to a point where someone has to add Gio Bernard. That's always an inflection point. It's usually around week 8 or 9 when the buys start coming in. It's kind of funny. But that's about it. And then they drafted Joe Tryon and Kyle Trask, potential quarterback of the future on the ass end of round 2. Jalen Darden from North Texas, I really love. But I don't know. Fine, that could be 1 just because they re-signed everyone, but I don't know. Chargers, like I said, respect. Getting Justin Herbert some help because he needs it. So they signed Corey Linsley. They signed Matt Filer, rebuilding that offensive line. They drafted Rashawn Slater. They signed Jared Cook. They lost Hunter Henry. They basically got rid of their entire offensive line from last year, which is a smart thing. And then they drafted Asante Samuel Jr. The cornerback room needs some freshening up. They let go of Melvin Ingram. They signed Josh Palmer, or they drafted Josh Palmer, 3rd round out of Tennessee. One of my draft crushes. So, yeah, I would put the Chargers at 1 before the Cleveland, which I don't get, for the Chiefs. So the Chiefs, respect. They absolutely went after it. So a lot like the Chargers, they got rid of their offensive line because of how they played in the Super Bowl. And they got rid of Fisher. They got rid of Schwartz. Both of them were injured last year. And then they signed Jumpa Joe Thuney, made him the highest paid guard in NFL history. They signed Kyle Long, who's already hurt. They signed Austin Blythe, who's underrated center. They traded for Orlando Brown Jr. Sure. They traded for Mike Hughes. I know, maybe that's why they're 4 and not 1, because they traded for Mike Hughes. They let go of Bashaud Breeland, more on him later. And then they drafted 2 really solid players at the top. They got Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey, 2 quasi-local guys that will be starters on this team. So sure, I understand why they're top 5. 5, Washington. I have no idea why Washington is ahead of the Vikings. Where, yes, William Jackson III coming in, big-time cornerback deal, respect. Curtis Samuel, who I think is extremely underrated. Curtis and Scary Terry will be one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. Fitzmagic has some tread left on the tire, man, because why the hell not? And then they drafted Jamin Davis as well as Samuel Cosme, who will be both be eventual starters. I think Jamin Davis could be a stud in this league. But I don't know. Does that scream better than the Vikings offseason? Does it really? So let's get into the Vikings. Now, we need multiple. Yeah, we're going to have to scroll on this one. So they signed Diesel Dalvin Tomlinson, Patrick Peterson, who has still has some good football left in him, Mac Alexander back for the first time, Bashaud Breeland, just getting after it, Candlelight Vigil, shoring up that 3rd linebacker spot, Xavier Woods, the pleasant surprise of minicamp, replacing Anthony Harris. They signed Sheldon Richardson back again, Shane Zylstra, and I only put him on there so I could say Shane. They traded for Mason Cole, a solid backup utility offensive lineman who has started in this league, and then the draft. All of that should put the Vikings firmly in the top 3, and then you get to the draft, where they finesse going from 14 to 23, getting Christian Darrisaw. They got extra picks that they spent on Kellen Mond, as well as Wyatt Davis, no matter what. They got Chaz Surratt. They got Patrick Jones. They got Cam Bynum. They got Janarius Robinson. They got ISM. They got a tight end who can also punt. They got Jalen Twyman with the Tom Brady pick. Woo! Come on. Come on, man. I mean, some of those picks weren't even listed. So how do you honestly look at this, all of this up in here, and be like, Washington had a better offseason. The Chiefs had a better offseason. I could sort of see the Chiefs. The Chargers had a better offseason. Oh, the Bucks are signing. But especially the Browns, how? Oh, because they got Clowney? My goodness. But the disrespect is real, and they were already on the list, but yeah, CBS Sports are back on the list. There you go. Be your thoughts. Being completely disrespected in the NFL offseason rankings. Let us know in the comment section below. Just add it to the list. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support that work? Post on the Venmo. But until next time, Skull, production value.